Welcome to the podcast, Philippe. And, today we're really diving deep into AI and drones.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating topic, and it's changing so rapidly.
It really is. And the learner you've sent in quite a collection of material about this, covering everything from drones in Ukraine to, AI-powered drones that are autonomous, and then even like expert discussions on what this all means for, warfare, the future of warfare and society as a whole.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, but it's really crucial stuff, to understand what's happening here.
For sure. So basically what we're going to do today is we're going to go through all these sources that the learner sent in and kind of extract the most important takeaways for you.
Right. It's like a deep dive into all this material.
Exactly, a deep dive. So to kick things off, I guess we should start with the immediate impact that drones are having, particularly in places like Ukraine where they've become pretty central to the conflict.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that really jumps out from these sources is how drones have been used in Ukraine right from the beginning of the conflict.
Yeah. One source even said that drones are like the eyes in the sky, for intelligence gathering. And then they're also being used for attacks.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just for observation. They're actually, engaging in combat as well.
Which has got to be a huge shift for how militaries are thinking about warfare.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's forcing them to adapt their strategies and tactics.
Totally. And it's not just about, these big militaries with all the fancy technology. Another source talked about how smaller groups are developing these drone swarms.
Oh, yeah. Those are really interesting.
So the idea is that you can have, a bunch of drones all interconnected and controlled by just one operator.
Right. And that creates this overwhelming force,
Exactly. Even if some of the drones get taken out, there's still enough to complete the mission, whether it's surveillance or attack.
Yeah. And it implies a certain level of autonomy, too, right? Because they're not being directly controlled every second.
Right. Exactly. One of the developers that was quoted in a source, they talked about how the drones can be guided initially, and then they switch over to a fully autonomous mode.
So they're like operating on their own based on their pre-programmed objectives.
Which is kind of wild to think about, the level of trust that you have to have in the technology.
For sure. It's definitely a shift away from that constant human control.
So moving on from, kind of that immediate impact of drones to the development of AI-controlled drones.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about AI.
There was this one source that really blew my mind. It's about this guy who actually developed an AI that allows drones to find specific individuals.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that he wasn't, part of some big government project or anything. He just did it on his own.
That's the thing that's so fascinating about this technology. It's becoming more and more accessible.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the article broke down his process into these three main components, the first one being autonomous navigation.
So the drone needs to be able to fly around on its own without any human intervention.
Exactly. And then the second component was this AI model that could detect humans and even faces in the video feed that the drone was capturing.
So essentially giving the drone the ability to see and identify people.
Right. And then the third part was all the hardware and communication systems that were necessary to pull it all together.
To actually make it work in the real world.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
Absolutely. It's like something out of a science fiction movie, but it's happening right now.
So getting into the technical details a bit more, the article talked about how he used computer vision models like MobileNet SSD and YOLO V10 to process the video in real time.
So these are like algorithms that can detect objects in images and videos.
Exactly. And then he even created this custom Python interface to control the drone and manage all the operational parameters.
So he was really doing some high-level programming.
Oh, yeah. And the article emphasized how important processing speed was for this whole thing to actually work.
Right. It can't be laggy or else the drone won't be able to react in time.
Exactly. And then the other thing that was really interesting was the integration of facial recognition technology.
Oh, right. So not only can the drone see people, it can actually identify them.
Yeah, they talked about using something called vector similarity to compare faces.
I'm not sure I understand that.
So basically, it converts facial features into this numerical representation of vector, and then the AI can compare those vectors to a database of known individuals.
So it's like a mathematical way of recognizing faces.
Exactly. And the article even showed a demo of the system successfully identifying a person in the video feed.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. And then from there, he moved on to figuring out the whole communication and autonomous flight stuff, which apparently was a bit of a struggle.
Right, because you need to make sure the drone can stay connected and navigate properly.
Yeah, they even said that finding suitable drone hardware was almost a deal breaker for the whole project.
So the physical platform itself is just as important as the AI.
For sure. But in the end, he was able to make it work with 2 different drone models.
So he got the AI talking to the drones, essentially.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get a little bit unsettling, because the next step in the project was to implement what he called a search and destruction algorithm.
Oh, wow. That sounds intense.
Yeah, so the idea is that the drone would scan an area on its own,
Yeah.
and if it found its target, it would take a specific action.
So we're talking about autonomous targeting now.
Yeah, and the article even talked about how he successfully tested the drone's ability to not only detect and identify a target, but also to approach it autonomously.
So the drone is making its own decisions about how to engage with the target.
Right. And they even demonstrated the payload delivery system, which in this case was just flour dropped from a balloon.
Okay, so nothing too destructive yet.
But still, it shows how easy it would be to adapt this technology for, more harmful purposes.
Absolutely. The potential is there.
And the guy who developed this, he even acknowledged the ethical implications of all this. He asked this really thought-provoking question. Imagine a world where machines autonomously decide who should live. Yeah, that's a heavy question.
And then he actually talked to a former special operations officer who said that, these autonomous weapon systems aren't some distant future thing. They're already here.
So they're being used by militaries right now.
Apparently. So the expert talked about this find, fix, finish sequence that's used in military operations.
I'm not familiar with that. What does it mean?
So basically, the drones are used for persistent surveillance to find and fix targets. And the ethical debate is all about that transition from fix to finish, the actual act of engaging the target.
Right, because then you're talking about machines making life or death decisions.
Exactly. And there's a huge concern about preventing unintended consequences like civilian casualties.
Especially in complex environments where it's hard to tell who's a combatant and who's not.
Totally. And then they also discuss this idea of, what if individuals started creating their own autonomous drone fleets with harmful capabilities?
I mean, that sounds like something out of a dystopian movie. I know, but the expert said that from a technological standpoint, it's becoming increasingly possible.
Even with the current limitations in processing power?
Yeah, apparently that's the main bottleneck right now, being able to do all the AI processing directly on the drone itself.
So the goal is to have these completely autonomous drones that don't need to rely on any external system.
Exactly. And the expert even encouraged people to experiment with drone technology, to learn and understand it better.
That's interesting. So they're advocating for more people to get involved in this field.
Yeah, but it also kind of highlights this whole dual-use nature of the technology. There are obviously beneficial applications.
Like search and rescue or environmental monitoring.
Right. But the fact that it can be so easily adapted for harmful uses is a major concern.
It's like a double-edged sword.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the broader perspectives on this whole thing, from military experts and ethicists.
Okay, yeah, let's hear what the experts have to say.
There was this one source that I found really interesting. It was like a compilation of different discussions about the increasing autonomy of AI in drone systems.
So what were some of the main takeaways from those discussions?
Well, a lot of them highlighted the rapid progress that's being made in this field. And then they also raised concerns about the potential loss of control, as these systems become more and more autonomous.
Right, because at some point you have to ask who's really in charge.
Exactly. And there were these excerpts from a documentary that talked about how AI is not just affecting, everyday life, but it's also transforming weapons technology.
So AI is literally changing the face of warfare.
Yeah. And while some people believe that AI could actually lead to more precise and humane warfare, because the machines are making the decisions.
There's still that fundamental problem that war is inherently destructive no matter how you slice it.
Right. And one of the experts pointed out that AI is already being integrated into military operations in a lot of ways that people might not even realize.
Like in logistics or intelligence analysis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the main concern is around these lethal autonomous weapons systems.
Yeah.
The ones that can identify and engage targets without any human intervention.
So we're talking about killer robots, basically.
Yeah, and while they're not widespread yet, the trend is definitely moving in that direction.
Which is pretty scary when you think about it.
Yeah, and there's this kind of split in the international community right now, with some countries being very cautious about these systems, while others seem to be pushing ahead full steam.
So it's creating this potential for instability and even conflict.
Exactly. And a lot of the drive towards greater autonomy is coming from this desire for faster, more accurate, and more effective weapons.
It's like an arms race in AI.
Yeah, and the governments are aware of the risks, of losing control, but they also feel this pressure to keep up with the competition.
That's a tough situation.
And it's not just about offensive capabilities either. There's a lot of work being done on autonomous systems for things like transportation, logistics, reconnaissance.
So AI is being integrated into all aspects of military operations.
Totally. And one of the big challenges for these autonomous robots is operating in environments where GPS isn't available.
Right, because GPS can be easily jammed or disrupted.
Exactly. So they're working on alternative navigation technologies that allow the robots to figure out where they are based on their surroundings.
So like using cameras and sensors to build a map of the environment.
Exactly. And there's this idea of human-robot teaming, where autonomous systems would work closely with human soldiers.
That sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
I know. But even in those scenarios, the question of who has ultimate authority over the use of lethal force is still a major concern.
Right, because you don't want the robots making those decisions on their own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And some military analysts believe that AI could actually be really helpful for processing huge amounts of data, from all these different sensors that are being used.
So it could lead to quicker and more informed decision-making.
Exactly. But as we've seen in Ukraine, even the most advanced technology can't change the brutal reality of war.
Right at the end of the day, it's still people who are fighting and dying.
And one of the biggest challenges for developing military AI is making sure that humans can still understand and control it.
You need that human oversight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to be able to intervene if necessary, especially when you're talking about AI that's designed for autonomous action and rapid decision-making.
It's a tough balance to strike.
So the learner, that was a whirlwind tour of AI and drones. It's a rapidly changing landscape with huge implications for the future.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
We saw how drones are being used in current conflicts like Ukraine and how AI is enabling the development of autonomous systems that can do some pretty amazing things.
But also some pretty scary things.
Right. And we talked about the ethical challenges, the potential risks, and the need for careful consideration as we move forward.
It's not just about the technology itself, but how we choose to use it.
Exactly. So the learner, as AI and drones become more sophisticated and integrated into our lives, how do we balance the benefits with the risks? And what role should we play in shaping their development and deployment?
Those are big questions, and there are no easy answers.
But they're definitely worth thinking about.
Absolutely. This is a conversation that we need to keep having.
And on that note, if you're enjoying these deep dives, we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube today. So if you could subscribe, that would be amazing.
We really appreciate your support.
Thanks for listening.
And for thinking deeply about these important issues.